Welcome to Why Are We Like This, a Heartstopper podcast.
I'm Ashley, she, her.
And I'm Alyssa, she, they. And today we have a very special guest joining us from the UK to talk about rugby and answer all of our British questions.
Hi, I'm Georgie, she, her.
Hi, Georgie.
Hi.
Hello. Hello.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah. You're very welcome.
Do you want to give the audience your qualifications?
So I'm from England, so obviously all the UK schooling. I've been through UK schools, and I also play rugby, so can hopefully answer some of the rugby questions.
Yay! We have a lot of rugby questions.
Yeah.
And those are the two most confusing, rugby and school. It's like, I don't know what's happened. Yeah. I don't know what's going on.
Both things that I've done, so hopefully I'm confused by both as well, so we'll see.
That's okay. I'm a teacher in the American school system, and I also went through the American school system, and I'm confused by it. So that's just education systems are a mess.
Built to be confusing.
Yes. So I think that we should start with the question that we asked the most in the first episode, which was, how does rugby even work?
Right. Big question. So, I mean, rugby is the base of rugby isn't too confusing. I mean, the goal of rugby is to put the ball on the other side of the pitch. Like, that's the basic idea. And you run forward, you pass backwards. It's full contact, so it's like tackling, but you can only tackle the person who's got the ball. So that's like the base game, like the base idea of rugby. And being fast is definitely a win. So I think, recruiting fast people, you can see the goal. And you need 15 players. So, and ideally you want some substitutes as well, because, people go off injured and whatnot.
15's that's a large team, right?
Yeah, so you have 15 people on, so there's 30 people on the pitch at any given time.
Yeah, that seems like a lot. I know soccer is 11 per team on at once.
Yeah, no, it's busy. And so you'd have 8 forwards and then 7 backs. So the forwards are like typically your like bigger, stronger players, and they do like the scrums and the line outs, which is the lifty thing. And then your backs are like the faster people who typically do more of like the running and the passing and stuff like that.
So explain the lifty thing.
So the lifting is specifically for line out. So if the ball has gone off the side of the pitch, someone from the team who didn't knock the ball out will throw the ball in. And when they throw the ball in, the 2 other teams will sort of line up and they can lift one of their players into the air to try and catch the ball. So it's done like... It's only done during line out, so it's not done at any other time. It's like almost like a set move that you would do.
Okay.
I've been lifted a couple of times, and it's terrible. I hate it. It's quite scary. And yeah, you're not allowed to like drop them when they're in the air or anything, but you can sort of like compete for the ball in the air.
That makes more sense, because I was like, how is this feasible during a game?
No, only during like very set times, like when the ball's gone into touch on the sides.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
So a scrum is because in rugby the ball has to travel backwards. So if it's called a knock on, but if you've knocked the ball forwards, it's a scrum to the team who didn't do it. So you have your 8 forwards, they kind of like connect heads. There's like 3 in the front and then 2 behind them, and then 2 on one on each side, and then 1 at the very back. And you basically try and push each other, and the ball's kind of put in the middle, like down the tunnel, and you basically have to try and push each other off the ball and have the ball sort of travel underneath the scrum and out the back, when someone would then pick it up and pass it to the sort of the rest of the players. So it's basically just a big pushing each other thing. And that's like another thing that happens at like set time. So it wouldn't just be like randomly in the middle of the game. It would be like only if the ball's there's a couple of times. So like the main time would be if the ball's been knocked forward.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Wait, I'm still hung up on the ball travels backwards.
Yeah.
What?
You can kick it forwards, but you have to pass backwards. You can't pass forwards. So you have to run forwards and pass backwards. Yeah.
That's why they always throw it like that.
Okay.
Yeah, which is why you sort of throw it sort of, because it can go level or it can go backwards, but it can't go forwards. You can kick it forwards, but you need to pass it backwards.
That's going to take some skill to know who's behind you.
Yeah, just look. I mean, you have to be behind the player with the ball, otherwise you're offside. So everyone on your team should be behind you.
Gotcha.
And I tried to see, I tried to look for the numbers on their shirts to see what positions they played, but I couldn't spot it.
I know this because Eddie and I were looking it up because of a fan fiction that I was working on, which is available now to read on Archive of Our Own. But Nick is number 10.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
And Charlie's 14.
Yeah, so Charlie would be a winger, which would make sense. Wingers are typically fast. That's the sort of the main, you're typically your fastest players are going to be on the wing, which is positions 11 and 14. And then 10 is the fly half. And the fly half is in the back line. So they're not like part of the scrum or part of the line out, but they're going to be like kind of like the decision maker in the back line. I've heard it. I mean, I don't know much about American football, but I've heard it equated to kind of like the quarterback, like the person who kind of decides what the move's going to be. But they're kind of like the bossy people in the backs.
So the number you're assigned, you don't pick your number. You're like assigned based on your position?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so positions 1 through 8 are forward, and then 9 through 15 are backs.
Okay.
And then anything sort of 16 to, whatever is your substitutes. I think it's usually like 16 to 24.
Okay.
Interesting.
And then do the sub numbers, do they correspond as well? Is it kind of like just...
Typically, like 16, 17, 18 would be forward substitutes, and like the higher numbers would be back substitutes, but it doesn't have to be. It can be anything. Like the subs can go on for any. And like you can end up like swapping your positions around during the game as well. So like if I've started the game playing 9 and then at halftime the 10 has subbed off, I could play the 10 position, but I'd still have the 9 shirt on.
Right.
But like you'd start the game typically wearing the shirt that's the position.
Okay.
That's interesting.
So because, we hear throughout the show that he's Rugby King Nick Nelson, and I'm curious as to what, like in the school culture or in like rugby would make it why he would be dubbed that, like amongst some of the students at Truham.
I think it would. So I think with a lot of schools in the UK, they tend to either sort of be like rugby schools or football schools. Like not always, but a lot of the time they'll kind of be really big on one of the two sports. And so I guess if he's like, I would imagine it would be that like he's the best rugby player, and he's like, 10 can quite often be like a try scorer, or like if he's, I would imagine it's basically like he's just the best player on the team. And it sounds like they're maybe not doing because one thing that struck me as a bit unusual is for rugby to be a big enough sport within the school that he's like the rugby king, and he's, quite popular partly because of being part of sports, but they can only get 15 players on the team and they need to like recruit. Like it's weird to me that they haven't got enough people that they're turning away, like, that they're having tryouts and being like, no, you're not good enough to get on the team. Like it seems odd to me that they only have 15 players and they're actually having to actively recruit more players. But I imagine he's just like the best player.
I'm also wondering if maybe that's a Tau exaggeration.
Yeah, that would also
Might
make sense.
Be Tau. Seems like something Tau would do.
Yeah. Okay. So the 1, 2, 3 squeeze exercise they do.
Yeah. So that's pretty common, I think. So you do it like at the beginning of the game, like so you all like come in a little circle and you like grab a shirt and you're all like tucked in. You're sort of like, be like, we're gonna win this match. You sort of hype yourself up a little bit. Like quite often the captain will like hype everyone up, and then you'll do like a 1, 2, 3 squeeze and sort of get yourself in the right zone. Like a little bit of aggression, a little bit of like team camaraderie, like. Yeah, I think it's sort
like
of
a huddle.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. So you do it like
but instead of like 1, 2, 3 break.
So like some people,
1, 2, 3,
some teams do that. So like my team, we put our hands in the middle and we go like 1, 2, 3, and then shout our team name. But a lot of teams will do like the squeeze, and I think it's because it's a bit more aggressive. So like with a contact sport like rugby, aggression is a good thing. So I think it's like to get you in the right sort of physicality.
That makes sense. That's all of my rugby questions.
Yeah, that's all. I think that's everything that I have as well for rugby. So,
is there anything you want to add about the rugby representation in the show?
I think it seemed, like I said, like the only thing that struck me as a little odd was rugby, and like rugby's quite a popular sport in the UK. Like I don't think it's not as big as say football, but like or soccer, but it's definitely a big sport. And I think it's odd that an all boys school would be struggling to have enough players for the team. But other than that, it seemed like good rugby. I mean, the way that they were practicing tackling was a little. It was a decision, and the fact that, and like the idea that Charlie wouldn't already be quite well versed in rugby, like he would have. Like at my school, at least, like the boys did rugby every year as part of like PE. Like it was, like every year they had to do a term of doing rugby.
Okay, but as a nerd, in Charlie's defense, like, do we really think that he is an enthusiastic participant in the rugby unit?
This is fair. I mean, gay crushes will drive you to do a lot of things, and I guess that's fair.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think that also played a role in the tackling practice. They were just trying to get a little physical.
That was they weren't practicing tackling; they were flirting.
That's fair. Yeah.
Nick was like, "I think you should probably try to tackle me."
Yeah, maybe you should just like hold me. Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, so the other big topic we had was school. Mm-hmm. Which I do understand a little bit better because you already explained it to me one-on-one the last time we were together.
Yeah. And I have a vague understanding from being that like Tumblr era, like Anglophile, crazy Doctor Who person who watched basically all of the popular British shows. So I have like a tiny understanding. But that was our other big question was how does British school work?
Okay, so I guess so British school is the main sort of chunk of secondary school would be year 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11. And then sixth form is like year 12 and 13, or sometimes it's called upper sixth and lower sixth. And school sort of so basically you have to be in school until the end of year 11. At that point you can do an apprenticeship or you can go to college, which is different from American college. It's like what you do from sort of 16 to 18. You can do kind of like vocational courses like health and beauty, stuff like that. Or typically more like academic schools so like the school that I went to, we had like sixth form integrated into our school, and you would do A-levels, which typically you do if you're going to university. So like you start school at this when you're 11, and then years 10, 11, 12 and 13 is like the equivalent to the American high school, I think.
Okay.
So you would go into year 10 at like 13, 14?
Yeah, so year 11 would be like 15, 16. So year 10 would be 14, 15.
Okay. Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah, and then year 12 is like 16, 17, year 13 is 17, 18. So you start school in like when you're like 11 or 12, like you start secondary school at 11 or 12.
Okay. So for those of you Americans listening, take the year and subtract 1, and that is the American equivalent, basically, right? Okay, yeah. So like if I were teaching, because I teach 7th grade, so I'd be teaching year 8 if I were in the UK.
Yeah, like 12, 13.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so then like the like UK college is like it's like trade school essentially, or it's like you're like you said like hair and beauty. I'm also thinking like some other things where you need additional training but not necessarily a degree.
So in the UK you have to be in some form of education until you're 18, but that education doesn't necessarily have to be school. So a lot of people will do like apprenticeships and stuff instead. College, typically you do like level 3s in something. So level 3 is the equivalent of A-levels. So you can do like a level 3 in childcare if you want to work in a like a nursery, or you could do a level 3 in like hairdressing if you want to be a hairdresser. Some universities will accept level 3 qualifications. Like your kind of more prestigious unis will probably only take A-levels. So if you're wanting to go to like, especially like a top uni, like, you know, Oxford, Cambridge, and like the other Russell Group unis, a lot of people you're going to go through and you're going to do your A-levels. And in the UK, so for GCSEs, which is the exams that you sit at the end of year 11, most places you sort of have to do English and maths and some sort of science, but like you typically will do like 10 subjects ish, like 7, anywhere between like 7 and 14 subjects I think you can do. Whereas A-levels, you only do 3 subjects. So for your last 2 years of school, you'd only study. So like I studied art, politics, and biology. And I didn't study any other subjects when I was like from 17 to 18, 16, 17, 18. But yeah, like, so for the A-levels are kind of weird because like you could study maths, you could do like maths, further maths, and physics, and like never have to write an essay past year 11.
That sounds horrifying.
And you could also do like English history. You could do English literature, English language, and history, and never have to like do any science past age 16.
Lit and Latin are different. That's cool.
Yeah.
I know in the US we have like AP courses, which are like college level classes that you take while you're still in high school. And so like you can do AP language and composition when you're in like it's like you do that and that's the prerequisite, and then you can do AP literature. But I like the idea of being able to like study both of those for 2 years.
So even for so like for GCSEs at my school, GCSE English language and GCSE English literature were 2 separate GCSEs that I sat. Like we had one English class, but in the one English class we were studying for 2 separate exams.
And Alyssa, for me, I just took AP English, period.
There was just one?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I took AP Lang, and I chose not to take AP Lit the following year because the teacher for AP Lit, I took a writing elective with her and I hated her. So I was like, I don't want to take AP with this woman.
Fair.
Yeah, no, we just had like the overall broad subjects. There was like AP History, AP English, AP, well, the math is split up because obviously there's a bunch, you can take like AP Geometry, AP Calculus.
So we don't have maths split up into different things. It's just maths, even in like A-level. So the only slightly different thing is like we don't have any sort of like AP class, but you can do further maths or additional maths as like an A-level subject. And so although typically you would do 3 A-levels, a lot of people, if they're doing a 4th A-level, they'll do their 4th A-level being further maths. But a lot of universities, if you were to do like further maths and physics, they wouldn't count further maths and maths as sort of separate subjects, even though it's like twice the amount of work. But so a lot of people, if they'll do 4 A-levels and they'll do additional maths instead if they're like really good at maths. But it wouldn't be split into like calculus or anything like that. It's just maths.
Oh,
so like in the UK, if you didn't like maths and you weren't good at it, you especially if you were planning on then doing a degree in something like, you know, English or something not maths or science related, you could do your maths GCSE at 16, pass that, and then never have to do any kind of maths again, which for a lot of people works really well.
I also got lucky because I have a social work degree and they did not require me to take any math in university for my social work degree. So I did it in 11th grade and I've not done math since.
Yeah, I've also not done math since I was like 17 years old, and my students ask me all the time to help them with their math. And I look them dead in the eye and say, I have not taken a math class since the year 2013. Are you sure that you want me to help you?
Yeah.
And then they run away. Yeah, so I think too, we were wondering what like a typical school day for like a year 10, year 11 would look like.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it probably varies obviously from like school to school. I went to 2 different secondary schools. So like for the ones that I went to, which is potentially specific to my area, I don't really know, but we'd have like 5 or 6 lessons each day that would last either 50 or 60 minutes. So like the school that I went to that had 6 lessons, I think they were each like 50 minutes. And then the school that I went to that had 5 lessons a day, they were each 60 minutes, I think. So the school that I went to, for like the bulk of my secondary school, we had 2 1-hour lessons in the morning, then like a 20-minute form time, where I don't really understand the point of form time, to be honest, still to this day. We'd have to like register. Sometimes we'd have assemblies. It would be like daily notifications, like stuff that might be happening.
It sounds like homeroom.
Yeah,
I think it's probably similar. And like, so in my school, we had vertical tutoring. So there was, rather than my form being people who were all in my year, my form had like 2 people from each year group.
okay.
Which I think is maybe it's like in the school in Hartstopper, because they're in different years. And so I think maybe,
Yeah, and
I thought that was maybe what was happening.
would it be common for them to would it be common for them to switch from like horizontal to vertical mid-year? Because they like make an announcement that they're switching to vertical form groups.
So my school did it at the end of one year. So my first year of school would have been form groups within my year, and then at the beginning of year 8, they'd switched it to vertical.
Mm.
But midway through the year, I think's a weird decision, but I guess it could happen. It seems more likely that they'd do it just at the start of the academic year. But then, so you'd have like a break time, then another 2 lessons, then an hour lunch, and then 1 more lesson, and then we'd be sort of free to leave. But some schools will have like your form time, they'd have it at the beginning and the end of the day to sort of register, I think in a way to like try and stop people from leaving early. But yeah, my school didn't. We had it in the middle of the day. And like my school day, I think, was from like 8:50 till 3:50, I want to say, something like that. Which I think is pretty common. Yeah, like sort of 8, I think any time between sort of like 8:30 and 9, and then finishing at any time between like 3:30 and 4 is pretty typical for secondary school.
Are all of the schools there that bright and colorful?
Definitely not. No. Yeah.
Staged for the show.
Like, I mean, like, I guess like some, like there are probably some nicer, sort of more, but yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say so.
And that actually kind of leads into something I was wondering. Do you think that they're private schools or public schools?
I think, because they're grammar schools, or they're called grammar schools. And like, so in the UK, it used to be a lot more common that schools would either be grammar schools, or it's called secondary modern schools, or like more commonly people call them like comps. And there'd be like an entrance test. So like the school that I went to was a grammar school, and you do a entrance test before you'd start, and if you passed you could go to the grammar school. If you failed, you would go to the secondary modern school. And they've sort of like scaled them back a lot. So now like I think there's only like 170 grammar schools out of like 3,000 secondary schools in the UK. Like they're a lot less common. So whether or not their school is, because we never find out the area, do we? It's kind of like made up.
It's
supposed to be Kent.
It's
Kent.
It's like supposed to be a fictionalized town near Kent.
Okay, so Kent is one of the areas that does still have grammar schools. So it might be that like because some schools, after they got rid of grammar schools, they kept the name grammar school.
Mm-hmm.
And so like it might be that, and it's just like a regular school that used to be a grammar school, or it might be that it's actually a grammar school where like there's an entrance test to get in, but it's still free.
Okay.
But it could,
so it's like
be a private school. It could be a paying school.
Okay. So in New York City, we have these things called specialized high schools where you have to take an entrance exam to get in, and like you have to pass it in order to be admitted. So like the one that, if you're anyone who might know would know, like Bronx Science or like Bedford Stuyvesant, those are like schools that you have to take an entrance exam to get into for high school. It's called the Specialized High School Scholastic Aptitude Test, I think. It's called the SHSAT, which is an awful name. But anyway, yeah, so it sounds kind of like that, because those are public schools within the New York City school system. They're just, it's basically like trying to get into university, except you're 14.
Yeah, so like I think the original idea behind grammar schools was to try and sort of filter out children who are likely to be high academic performers and go on to university versus sort of children who would therefore want to go to a more academic school compared to children who'd perhaps be like less academic. I mean, the whole system sort of, I think, has ended up being quite classist.
Mm-hmm.
But it's called the 11 plus exam. Where I live in Buckinghamshire, we had the 11 plus, so I sat the 11 plus. I went to a grammar school. And like, so in my town, there's 3 grammar schools. There's the co-ed one that I went to, and then there's a girls' school and a boys' school. So it could be that the boys' school that they go to is like the boys' grammar school, and you then have like the girls' grammar school.
Yeah, because I do know, I'm trying to remember, but there's a part in Solitaire, which is about Tori, where either their grandfather or someone makes a comment about how Charlie got into grammar school. So I'm assuming that at the very least in the books, it still is a grammar school, and it's not just that they kept the name.
It doesn't really give me private school vibes. Like,
Okay.
private schools, I think it looks like I think it looks more likely to be a grammar school than a private school, just sort of in terms of like how posh it seems.
And then our last school question was that is it common for schools, and particularly I guess an all-boys school, to have a rule about how long your hair could be, and that would be a suspendable offense?
I would love to say that that's ridiculous, but like, I don't. So obviously, like, I've never been to a boys' school, so I've never been to a single. Like, I've only ever been to co-ed schools, so like, I don't know for sure, but like stuff like that is definitely. I wouldn't be shocked. Like, my school, you weren't allowed to have, like, when I was in school, it was really popular to have like really short hair on the sides and like quite long hair on top, like a bit of a quiff thing going, and that wasn't allowed. That hairstyle was banned for some reason. And like, you wouldn't have been allowed to have like a mohawk or anything like extreme. So
Yeah.
rules, and like, you definitely weren't allowed to have your hair any sort of like non-natural color. I think they would have been like, if you tried to like shave bits of your hair, I think that would have been considered a bit extreme. So I think for them to try and have rules about hair length, it wouldn't shock me.
Interesting.
And it would be like you would get suspended if you did do that?
So like, my school, it would have been considered a regular uniform offence. And so for a regular uniform offence, I think if you had 3 offences per half term, you'd have an after school detention. And then if you had enough after school detentions, you'd have, like, it would sort of build up, if that makes sense. Like, if you had a certain number of after school detentions, you'd then get excluded for a day. Like, it would build up. So I can't imagine a school having it be like instantly you're excluded just for your hair, but I think it would be like if you're not willing to get a haircut, and it's then like an ongoing thing, which you know is messed up.
Yeah, it's messed up, but it makes sense? Question mark?
Yeah, like, I'm not. I hate it, but it doesn't surprise me.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so yeah, I think it makes sense that it's like Elle's not gonna cut her hair.
Yeah.
So she's just going to keep getting in trouble, and eventually that they're going to suspend her.
Yeah. And like, a lot of schools, instead of like suspending people, like you'd be in like isolation or like internal exclusion. So you'd have to like, you'd go to like a room on your own and have to do all your schoolwork there.
Yeah.
Like in school suspension.
Yeah. So I think that's like a lot more common than out school suspension.
Yeah, that's similar here too. Because I hate out of school suspension. Sounds like a reward for doing bad things.
Literally, yeah. And like, you have to like try, they have to be trying to keep kids in school, which suspending them isn't.
Yeah. And I think at the very least for like the city, New York City, your out of school suspension rate like negatively impacts the school, but like in school suspension rate, it doesn't, because they're still marked present, and that's all that really matters.
Yeah.
So that they show up.
Yes. Ashley, do you have anything else about schools?
Not that I can think of. So now we just have like some random stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
Like, are Sweet 16s a thing in the UK?
Or was Harry just flexing?
So I think like 16 I think would count as like a bigger birthday. So like 16, 18, 21, 25. Like, I think they count as like bigger birthdays. but like Sweet 16 in the way that I perceive as being in the US, I wouldn't say is a thing. Like you can't really do anything at 16. Like I think you used to be able to buy lottery tickets, but I don't think you can now. And you can consent to have sex. And that's like it's not like a big one. Like you can't drive, you can't, like I don't think it's a big thing in the same way it is in the US. I think it's just like a bigger deal than maybe turning 15 is. But as a teenager, like I made a big deal out of my 16th birthday, but I made a big deal out of every birthday I had as a teenager. But yeah, I'd say 16 is a bit bigger.
How old do you have to be to drive?
17.
Okay.
Also birthday related. In the show and in the comics, they wear the like buttons and pins on their shirt that have like the year they're turning. Is that a common thing? Yeah,
100%. Yeah, like a lot of birthday cards will come with, like, we'd call them badges, but like pins or like in the card for you to wear. Especially like if you're a kid, and then you can buy like for the big birthdays. Like you struggle to buy one for like every single age that you could turn, but like 16, right. 18, 21, 25, like the big ones, you could definitely, yeah. And like I've definitely worn many a happy birthday badge. Yeah.
So for Halloween, I was both Nick and Charlie. I had a mid-party outfit change. And so I had like a funky sweater, and I got a 15 button, and nobody at the party knew who I was. I had to like pull up. I just like went ahead and had screenshots ready. So I could just like show them when I walked, like, this is who I am. But yeah, trying to find a button that said 15 was really hard here. I had to get one that was like blank and then get number stickers and add the 15 to it.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it would be like a lot of supermarkets, like in like the card section at a supermarket, you'd be able to find like the big ones, and like a lot of, like I said, like kids' birthday cards especially will have, a lot of them will have like the badges in the card. But like any like more specialist card shop where you can get like the balloons with numbers on and stuff, you'd be able to get numbered badges as well.
Yeah, I went to Party City, which is like where you should be able to get anything party related. But they only had like 1 to like, I'd say ages like 1 through 6 had a button, and then there was no older kid buttons.
Not even like 16 terrible. And 18?
Mm-mm.
It's terrible.
I feel like I've definitely seen like plastic tiaras with 16s on them.
Yeah, they had tiaras and stuff, but they didn't have buttons.
It's just not the vibe.
Yeah, it's not really the vibes. I think Charlie's is handmade, and I do love the idea that like Isaac, Tao, and Elle had a craft night.
Like made.
Is that a thing? Like, will you make, like, are there people who will like make them for their friends and like gift them, kind of like how in my school we would decorate people's lockers for their birthday?
That's really cute. No, like one of my friends bought me, because my birthday's on New Year's Eve, so like we'll go out, but a lot of the time we're going out for New Year's, not for my birthday specifically. So like one of my friends one year like got me a big happy birthday badge so that everyone would know it's my birthday. But like I don't know, I don't really know anyone making badges though, but I'm sure some people do. We don't really have lockers in the UK, so decorating lockers wouldn't be too much of a thing.
Interesting. We were talking about how tiny the lockers in the show were.
Yes, like I think my school had lockers, but you had to like ask at the beginning of the year to get, because there weren't enough lockers for everyone to have one, so you'd have to like specifically say that you wanted one, and it's like a whole thing. But like, because you just have a bag, and like I never had a locker because I was like, I can just carry my books in my bag.
No, we weren't allowed to carry our bags.
We were, but we had so many books that it would have like broken my bag.
We didn't really have many textbooks though. Like, not textbooks that we'd need every day. It would just be like your exercise books.
So we had like a thick textbook for every class, and then some of them would have like multiple books you had to bring. So like in between classes, you would take your backpack and switch out what books were in your backpack in your locker, so that you were only carrying like half of the weight around.
Like I think some people definitely had lockers, but yeah, I never had a locker. I just suffered through with a heavy backpack.
Shall we address the shoe tying?
Yeah, what's up with the shoe tying?
That is not a British thing. That's just someone who doesn't know how to tie their shoes.
It's just a Joe thing.
Yeah, I think it looks like it.
Didn't you say that Nick does it later too?
Yeah, but I couldn't find it. I'll have to ask Cassandra where she saw that, because she's the one who told me that she saw Nick do it too.
Maybe it's just like a thing for TV to make tying laces take longer, or like to get a perfect. But like I've never seen anyone tie their laces like that. That's yeah.
Well, I'm gonna post the video that I took of it, and I'm gonna ask people, do you tie your shoes like this?
Do you know how to tie your shoes, or do you tie them like this?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was very strange. But I do think that it makes sense of it being like a TV thing for like shot consistency and things like that. So I'm choosing to believe that that's the case. If it's not, that it's a British thing.
That's my guess is that it's a TV thing.
Also, the scene where Nick is making tea, he uses a glass jar of milk. Is that still common?
I wouldn't say it's common, but like you can definitely still get like I buy my milk at like the supermarket, so I just get like a regular, bottle of milk.
Yeah.
But like I know that some people you can get like bags of milk that are meant to be, I think, more eco. But like I know someone who gets their milk in like jars. I think it's like meant to be more eco because it's like local milk and it's like reusable jars and stuff. So I personally don't. I'm taking it as a sign that Nick's mum's just concerned for the environment,
which makes sense.
It
She's a good person.
It does make sense.
Just more reasons to stand Sarah Nelson.
Yeah, that would be my guess. Is because it's not like I wouldn't say it's like a super common thing, but I know some people who do, and
just... like here you would have to go to like the farmer's market to get it in a jar.
Yeah,
I think it'd probably be the same here. I don't know whether or not you can still get. I don't know if you can still get milk delivered. I don't know if it would be something where you'd have to go to like a market specifically for. Yeah, I'm not too sure.
I do, and now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like the idea of like milk in glass jars and like the implication that you're still getting it delivered by a milkman kind of like adds to this like quaint English town vibe, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was just like a stylistic choice.
It's a sort of vibe. Because it feels a little bit sort of cuter.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It is more aesthetically pleasing than like a plastic carton.
Yeah, exactly.
I was wondering how accurate is like Harry as like representation of like a British like douchey lad bro guy.
I think it's not bad. Like I think it's definitely a little bit dramatized. It's for TV, but like I think that sort of vibe, like a lad, and like I think especially with like the whole like rugby, like on the like the rugby lads, and like I think it's definitely like lad culture, opposed to like I guess like we wouldn't say like bro culture. It would be then like lad culture,
right?
And like I think it's thing where like group of boys like they'll say like really mean things. It's like, oh, it's just banter though. It's just banter. Like it's definitely an excuse to just be really mean to people, and you're like, oh, but it's just banter. But like I think it's pretty accurate. Like people sort of basically bullying, but like in a way that's kind of like bros and just like really gross. Yeah, it's not a great culture, but it's definitely very ripe, especially in like I think team sports like rugby lads and football lads. It's definitely very present. And
because that's different from like chavs though, right? Because in the comics, one of Charlie's friends calls Nick a chav at one point, and I thought that was a different thing.
Yeah, it is. So I mean, I think there's differing opinions on it, but for me, I think chav is kind of it's definitely a derogatory term, but like there's some people reckon it stands for council housed and violent, and like the idea of it's like these like low income or people from council estates who are like violent and aggressive. And I think like the like roadman would be kind of like the more modern description for it. So like I personally don't like it as a insult because I think it's a little bit classist. Like a bit mean. But like that would be like the sort of stereotypical chav would be like boys like with their like trousers like halfway up their ass, or like sets of like trackies and like caps onto like their hoods, and like girls with like big hoop earrings and like like lots of fake tan, and like where like they would do like lipstick in like nude colors, and it's like a very specific aesthetic, but like I'd say it's completely different from being like lad culture.
Okay, so it's just that was a weird choice on whichever character. I
would definitely not say that Nick, or at least how Nick's portrayed in the show, I definitely wouldn't say that would be like your stereotypical chav at all.
Yeah, because he's very much the same in the comics. And when I was rereading it recently, it jumped out at me. I was like, that's odd.
Yeah, like chav would definitely be. Yeah, I wouldn't say that would be, because he's like quite like clean cut and.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because I had always assumed that it was like the equivalent of, do we have a word for, I guess like, I don't know if there's really a word for it, but like lower class, like people from the hood, like the projects and stuff like that.
And like I'd definitely say like chav is, you know, I think it ends up being an insult essentially to like lower class people.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think there's a lot of like, I think it's a very problematic insult to be using, but I wouldn't say that Nick would fit the type of person, because he doesn't seem to like, he doesn't strike me as particularly lower class for a start.
Right.
And like typically people who are going to grammar schools, if that is where he's going, there's a massive class aspect to grammar schools.
Mm-hmm. And
Kent is quite a nice area.
So it was probably just like a really harsh dig.
Yeah. And like, to be fair, it's like the sort of thing that teenage boys would say to each other.
Yeah, you're like, yeah, I heard this is the new insult to call people, so I'm gonna call
literally.
Yeah. We also had some questions about some of the slang.
So yes, we mentioned Alyssa pointed out that they use dece for decent. Which was something that we had never heard.
I mean, I've never heard dece for decent, but like maybe it's maybe I'm slightly too old. Like maybe it's the teenagers of today. But I've never heard decent as dece.
Okay, what about dick nozzle? Because that's something I've never heard either. And
I missed dick nozzle.
They say it a couple of times in the show.
Dick nozzle is an interesting one. I can't say I've never heard it. Dick nozzle.
That's definitely part of like a trend of just kind of like taking nouns and combining them with euphemisms for the male sex organ.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
that's a thing.
Yeah. And it feels like the sort of thing that teenage boys would say. Like, I think that fits. Just like also, dick, anything.
Update. It is in, it's on page 23. Tao is in fact the one who says, come on, he's a fucking chav. He calls everyone mate and probably throws food at people on the bus.
I'd say like the sort of like antisocial behavior is perhaps associated with like chav as an insult. But I would personally say that there's more sort of class elements into the insult as well, rather than just. But yeah.
So Tao is in fact the one who calls Nick a chav, which again kind of tracks.
Yeah, it's not looking good, is it?
No, I promise there will be good things that I have to say about Tao.
Tao needs to read. There's a book called Chavs: The Demonization of the Working Class by Owen Jones. Tao needs to read that, and then he'll make better language choices, maybe.
Isaac's probably read it. Isaac should.
I was about to say Isaac probably split it to him after he said it. It was like, here's a book recommendation.
Well, no, Isaac wouldn't have because he's not in the comics.
Oh yeah, well,
we'll just graft him in. I'm sure that TV Tao needs to read it as well.
Yeah.
Did you say was he a knob?
No, I skipped it.
You skipped that. Okay. Because Tori asks, because when Charlie says he broke up with his boyfriend, meaning Ben, Tori asks, was he a knob?
I'd say knob. Knob is a pretty standard insult. Knobhead. Yeah, just another way of calling someone a dick. But yeah, that's a good one. Knob.
I don't think there's any other ones that really stood out to me. But yeah, I really hated dece for decent. I was like,
yeah, I don't love
Harry,
dece for decent.
Shut the fuck up. And it also doesn't help. It's like one of the first things that we hear Harry say.
Yeah.
So I'm like, no,
the connotation is already not great.
And it's because it's also just like the context of like, is he even good at sports? We want to be good. But yeah.
I just have one more thing that didn't make the Word document. Can you please say the word cinema?
Cinema.
Okay, so they all drag it out on the show. Cinema.
I'd say cinema is...
Is that like a regional accent thing?
It could be cinema. Cinema. You could say, cinema. I'm not saying it too much. It seems to sound like a real... But cinema, yeah. No, I think there's probably a slight... I mean, Kent, I'd say, is less... like, the regional accent for Kent, I think, would be less dramatic than what you'd hear from other regions in the UK, in terms of, I think, what, especially, like, foreign viewers would be more used to hearing. Yeah, cinema. Yeah, okay, cinema. Yeah. Okay, I hear
it. I'm looking something up now. Because Imogen's the only one who I can, like, specifically imagine, like, hear saying it in my mind. And, like, when she says it, she's asking a question. And so, like, it kind of makes sense in the context of she's, like, hopeful and excited. And she's like, and then we'll go to the cinema? Like, what do you think? Come on. Do you still want to date me? You know? Because I'm trying to think.
But I feel like Nick and Charlie both say it in the episode where they go to the cinema.
Maybe I just missed that. Because Imogen is the only one who, like, when she said it, it kind of stood out for me. But yeah.
It's like we put way too much emphasis on, like, the sin of it. Cinema.
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely more cinema. Yeah. I think there's more of an emphasis on the second syllable. But
yeah,
I think sort of have the longer A sounds anyway, and harsh A's.
So are there any other kind of like UK specific things that come up in the show that we didn't ask about that you think we should know? Or rugby specific things?
I don't think so. I think like them going to, because they go to Brighton Beach at the end, and I think that's like you can tell. I think like you can tell when like stuff's filmed like on location. Like Brighton Beach is pretty iconic, and like the pebble beaches and stuff, and like I think that's like a really cute. Like Brighton is like a very like and Brighton is super. Generally speaking, it's like quite a liberal town or city. So I think them going there makes a lot of sense in terms of like I think it fits. They haven't gone to like some little conservative area. Like they've gone to like, I mean, Brighton's like huge on like gay rights. They have like, it's definitely like a super liberal place to live. So there's something quite nice about them, like being there at that point.
A safe space.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it a reasonable day trip from Kent to Brighton?
Yeah, I think, I mean, yeah, because Kent's like, because Brighton's on the south coast. It's literally like straight down. Yeah, you could definitely get from Brighton to Kent really easily.
Okay.
Or from Kent to Brighton. Let me have a look. It'll be like an hour, just over an hour drive. Easy peasy.
Oh yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah.
That's not
or a 3.5 hour train journey, which would be a little bit less fun. But
and they do take the train.
They took the train, yeah, 3.5 hours.
I wonder if it's better if you do it like a good time of day though.
Yeah, I think because that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be like it would be a good couple of hours on the train, but it's definitely doable as a day trip.
That just makes his wet shoes even worse.
Listen, maybe they stopped in a shop and grabbed him a change of shoes.
And like I will say, for like walking on pebble beaches barefoot really hurts. Like I've been to Brighton and trying to walk anywhere on those beaches is horrendous, but I don't think it hurts enough to get wet shoes. That's terrible.
No, and he could have packed sandals. That's the thing, is that he planned this. He had a rucksack. There could have been some slide-ons.
If you're going to sit on a train for several hours with the sole purpose of going to the beach, wear flip-flops. You know, you can like flip-flops in your bag. Easy peasy. Yeah, it's a decision.
It drives me insane, and I'm never going to shut up about it. It is my one complaint about the show.
Not even Tao's haircut. Not even Tao's haircut.
I mean, it doesn't bother me as bad as it does the internet. I think it's a choice, and I don't love it, but also it's not taking me out of the show every time he's on the screen, whereas like that scene, every single time I'm like, no.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right. Well, thank you so much for answering all of our questions.
It's all right. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And if anything else comes up, we will be consulting you. So.
Of course.
Yes. Just don't be surprised if we continue to shout Georgie in the middle of episodes, because there are some that we have recorded already, but that are not out yet at time of this recording. And also, I'm sure that as we're like watching more closely the other episodes, other things will come up. But maybe what we'll just do is message you and be like, so we messaged Georgie.
So you're testing my knowledge about the UK.
We might just have to have you back at the end of season 1 to like
wrap up anything that we missed. Well, so you guys remember how in the last episode we said that it's impossible to skip between or to stop in between Kiss and Secret? Well, we did that and we're only kind of sorry about it. But of course, this is a bi-weekly podcast by two bisexuals, so we will be back in 2 weeks to talk about episode 4, Secret.
And if you want to follow us online, we are at Why Are We Cast on all platforms.
And until next time, bye.
Bye.